Hey, welcome to my channel. My name's Apocalypse, and this is a first video of mine where I figured I'd go into the idea of bullet journaling, or Bujo for short. So basically what I was thinking of doing is this year I figured I wanted a bullet journal, and I thought the best way to keep myself accountable is to actually start videos on it. So I've actually started filling it out. It's pretty washed out from my from my lighting that I have, so it's hard to see here. But I do have that of me filling it out, what I filled this with, in the rest of this video. I don't have a lot set up in it yet. I just wanted to get the 2020 started because I waited until New Year's Eve to start filling out the journal. But I hope you enjoy. If you have any tips or tricks to help me, I'd appreciate it. I have been journaling on and off for a few years. I go into that in the video, but I'm always excited to learn more. I watch a lot of other bullet journaling content creators on YouTube, and they have so many great ideas, and I'm not really involved in the community yet, but I am excited to push forward with it in this year. Thanks. Hope you enjoy. The notebook I chose to go with for this 2020 year was the Leuchtturm journal. I chose to do it in blue since this was mainly to focus on content creation, and I stream mostly on Mixer, and this is one of their main colors for their logos. Opening up the journal, it has a name and address section, and then also has preset out table of contents or index, which I thought was really nice. Going through, the pages are also already numbered for me, and flipping all the way to the back, there's a little pocketed area for me to sneak notes and little extras in there for me to keep track of. And checking at how many pages there are, it's numbered from 1 to 249, so plenty of pages to work with. I figured first what I would do is take out this old journal. Like I had mentioned, I've been doing this on and off for a few years. This journal, all the way from 2016, with plenty of bad handwriting. But I thought I would go back and reuse the end of this journal to help me plan out this newer journal. So I don't need an index, and I figured these are the main pages I wanted. I'll go into detail on how I filled in each of these, but this is where I kind of sketched out how I wanted to start this journal. So I went ahead and I opened up to the page I intended to be my title page, tried to crease it to keep it open nicely, and took out my Tombow pens. To get myself started, I reached in and grabbed my dark blue Tombow pen for me to use for creating this title page. I also looked up a few reference images for a Mixer logo for me to use. And there are a couple variations where you have white and a light blue, and I scroll down and look and see that there's a few with a dark blue and light blue. I kind of debated with the idea of which logo I should use. I even got out this other set of fine liner markers that I've had for a little while, but I realized I'm lazy and I just wanted to stick with the one color. So at this point I started to feel pretty confident in myself. Thought, you know what, I'll take this Tombow pen to paper, make this logo happen, and finish this title page. But I realized I'm not a great artist. I didn't know where I wanted to start it. I didn't know how big to make it. So anytime I got close to actually writing anything, I kind of chickened out. So I took out my trusty ruler and pencil to help me at least plan it. So I skipped ahead to where I have my final sketch of it, and I'm tracing it out with this Tombow pen. I decided to kind of skip ahead because it was a very long montage of me redrawing an X to find out that I'm really bad at drawing X's. But here I am filling it out. I realized after I completed it, it's not the best looking thing, but you know what? It serves its purpose. It might be off center, but I was happy with it. The only thing I wasn't happy with was there is kind of a gap underneath. So I debated on what I could do to help fill out this title page. What I ended up deciding was maybe putting in the year. So I went ahead with a Tombow pen, same color, wrote in 2020, and I realized there's still more of a gap. So I thought I would go in with cursive and write in streaming journal. Happy with the overall result, I figured I'd go back, clean up the edges around the logo, and do my best not to smear the Tombow pen at all. I've done that a lot when first learning how to use the Tombow pens in my personal bullet journals. So once I was satisfied with this, I figured I'd go back and start filling in my index. That way that my table of contents was updated as I was going through and creating this journal. As I flipped over to the other side of the title page, I did notice some bleed through from the Tombow pen, but nothing so bad that I couldn't work with it. Here you can see I actually switched colors for which pen I decided to use as my main color, only because the original pen that I had in black was actually kind of fading. I think it's my most used pen. So I've switched over to this dark brown hue. And here I'm beginning my reference page. A reference page is essentially a tool to help you set up your future spreads. Say you always know you have a spread that you like to have the page split in half. Well, now instead of having to remeasure or recount each time, you now have a static number on a page that you can flip back to and say, oh, I only have to go this far across for the half. So it's useful for things like that. For me, I liked to use it because I'm actually using a different type of journal for my personal journal. So the box sizes aren't exactly the same, the length and width, there are slight variations between different journals. I had originally gotten this idea from some other YouTubers like Amanda Rachel Lee and Plant Based Bride, and a handful of other bullet journal YouTubers that I can't remember at the moment. Well, there's plenty of great resources out there. So essentially what I found is horizontally, my log term is 26 boxes across, and then vertically, mine is 38 boxes down. So I went through it, and I also took time to mark the halfway point, about a third point, and about a quarter point. I think those are the usual demarcations I use. And then I went ahead with a separate color, and I also marked just above each one, this is the quarter, this is the third, this is the half, and then I didn't mark the whole. Once I finished my reference page, I debated on drawing the lines, but I thought that would distract me, so I thought I would go ahead and move on to my key. The key is one of those core assets to the bullet journal. I kept mine simple by just writing the title key at the top and then going through and writing down the symbols that I like to use. I like to use a full circle for a task. I use an arrow forward for migrate forward. I use an arrow back for replan in the future log. I have an X for completed, and then I have an open circle for event. So in this way, you can quickly reference anything you write down for yourself in the future and quickly go, oh, okay, I know exactly what this item means. After finishing up my key, I thought the next best thing to work on was my future log. So the future log is another one of those core assets to the bullet journal where it kind of puts your year at a glance, so you can make notes of things like, hey, so-and-so said they want to hang out in February. Maybe I should remember it, but I'm not going to remember it now, so I'm going to write it next to my February section of my future log. So here I am writing the title future log and realized I left an awkward gap. So I thought, you know what? Best way to fill a gap is to put in a doodle. So I figured I would go ahead and try for the Mixer logo again, this time completely winging it, and also this time I feel like this looked better than when I was trying so hard to make it perfect in the beginning. I don't know if that's just me or if everybody is like that, where they take things too seriously and end up messing it up. But so I went through and took out my phone and figured I'd hide anything personal that I have written in my calendar and show that I'm using my calendar to help me just set up the dates. Once I had everything laid out, I realized, you know what, this is a perfect time for me to use my reference page. So I realized that the height of my title was 5 lines. I subtracted that from 38 to get 33. And if I'm putting 3 months per side, then each month should get about 11 lines. So I went ahead and started filling out the months. Since I'm very bad at messing up the dates, what I decide to do is I will start from the second week where it's a full week and then fill out those numbers for that week and then go back up and finish the earlier week. So since I had used my reference page, it kind of guesstimated how many lines I wanted for each calendar. From there, I decided to also use my ruler to help me line up the months on the opposite side of the page, just so I wouldn't have to keep recounting everything. here you can see I completed the first half of my future log, and I debated on drawing lines across, but I thought it looked clean the way it was. If I find that, events are overlapping each other, maybe I'll go back in the future and draw those in. Here, I'm starting on the second half of my future log. I figure I'd do my best to emulate the title that I had for the first half, with the same gap and drawing in the same logo, and I decided to wing it, and it didn't come out so great. And I mean, that was bound to happen. You get a little overconfident, you start winging things, and then you look at it and you're like, oh, my logo doesn't look like an X anymore, it looks like some awkward butterfly wings. But you know what? I continued to roll with it and finished out the other half of my future log. So after my future log, the next section I wanted to work on is kind of goals that I have across these 2 pages. So I went back to my reference page to help me split up the page into fourths, essentially. I wanted it in half vertically and in half horizontally. So I went back and I marked out exactly where each of these halves of the page belong. Once those were marked out, I took out my ruler and drew myself guidelines so I knew where to write my titles. Once this is done, in the top left quadrant, I wrote in goals. Top right, I wrote in dreams. And the bottom, kind of in the middle, I wrote wish list. The difference between each of these being goals are obtainable numbers I'd like to be able to reach, things that are within my control. Dreams are things that the goals would essentially work towards, but I might not be able to, necessarily control on my own. And then wish list is kind of a list of things that I'd like to do to either be able to upgrade how my things look or upgrade the equipment that I use. So once I had that filled out, I went ahead and filled that into my table of contents. The next page that I worked on, I essentially just wrote the title for now. I'm not 100% sure how I want to handle this page, but I titled it Goal Tracker. I figured it'd be good for me to see how I'm working towards my goals in a meaningful way. But if you have suggestions for goal trackers or even habit trackers that you like to use in your journals, please leave it in the comments. I know there's systems where you have a grid and you fill it out, but I'll see. I'm still debating on how I want to fill this page out. This next section that I had thought of, I just called it brainstorming. I didn't have any particular ideas about what this page should do or should be or should mean. I just wanted a section where as ideas come to me, I can just write them down somewhere so I don't lose them. I'm the kind of person that if you give me sticky notes, I just write notes on sticky notes. I put them in my pocket or put them on a notebook and I lose them before I can even use the ideas that I've written on them. But I thought the title section looked kind of boring, so I went through my Tombow pens and tried to see what colors I could get to match different logos. I figured, you know what, I have a red one, maybe I'll make a little YouTube logo in the corner. I also use various forms of social media, so I looked up the Instagram logo. This one, I didn't want to go too extra on. Again, I'm not the most creative when it comes to art, but I thought, you know what, how hard can we draw some boxes in the color purple? Turns out very hard. I think this came out looking like an awkward blob, but I can pretend to tell myself it's the Instagram logo. Maybe if I squint really hard, I can't tell the difference. So after I finish up that one, I decided to also, you know what, why not also do one for Twitter? I also use Twitter. This one I decided to use instead of my Tombow pens since I didn't really have a matching light blue to kind of wing it in this fine liner pen. This, I guess you can say looks like a bird. Again, maybe if you squint really hard, you can't tell the difference between the bird and the actual logo. And then of course, for what I originally started this journal for, the Mixer logo again. I feel like every time I do this, it comes out worse, but you know what? Here it is. As I was flipping around, I realized I never filled out the name section. So I thought, I'd write in Apocalypse. And then since I was just dealing with drawing social media logos, I figured, hey, instead of an actual address, I'll just put in all of the links or usernames I have for my social media. As I was doing kind of a final flip through the journal, I realized I never filled out my goal tracker or goal section. So I went back to my brainstorming section and went, hey, red pen for YouTube, and wrote down goals and goals tracking as a potential future video. Then after that, I realized, you know what else you need to do in a Bujo? You also need to do your monthly and weekly spreads. First, I figured I'd start with a monthly spread, one step at a time. But yep, that's my completed 2020 setup for my journal. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good day.